In 1973, on a night in Birmingham, Elvis Presley snuck past hospital security and entered a room in secret. In that room, 6-year-old Tommy Washington lay dying, and what Elvis did next didn't just save a child's life, it changed the entire American South forever. It was November 15, 1973, and Birmingham, Alabama was still a city divided by the color of skin. The Civil Rights Act had been passed nearly a decade earlier, but in many parts of the Deep South, segregation lived on in unspoken rules and institutional practices that kept black and white communities separate and unequal. Tommy Washington was just 6 years old when the pain started. At first, his mother Dolores thought it was just growing pains, the kind every child experiences. But when Tommy began crying in agony during the night, clutching his arms and legs, she knew something was terribly wrong. The local black community clinic diagnosed him with sickle cell anemia, a genetic blood disorder that predominantly affects African Americans. Sickle cell anemia causes red blood cells to become misshapen, blocking blood flow and causing excruciating pain episodes called crises. Without proper treatment, these crises can be fatal. Tommy's condition was severe, and the small clinic in Birmingham's black neighborhood simply didn't have the advanced equipment needed to treat him properly. Dolores Washington worked 3 jobs to support her family. She cleaned offices at night, did laundry for wealthy white families during the day, and sold homemade food on weekends. Her husband Robert worked at the steel mill, coming home every evening covered in soot and exhaustion. Despite their hard work, they lived paycheck to paycheck in a small house on the wrong side of Birmingham's racial divide. When the clinic doctor, Dr. James Crawford, explained that Tommy needed immediate treatment at a major hospital, Dolores felt her world collapse. Dr. Crawford was one of only 3 black doctors in Birmingham, and he had seen too many children like Tommy suffer because of the color of their skin. "Mrs. Washington," he said gently, "Tommy needs blood transfusions and medication that we simply don't have here. He needs to be at Birmingham General." Birmingham General Hospital was the city's premier medical facility, with state-of-the-art equipment and some of the South's best doctors. It was also completely segregated. The hospital had a policy that was never written down but was understood by everyone. Black patients were not admitted except in the most extreme emergencies, and even then they were treated in a separate, inferior wing. Dolores gathered every ounce of courage she possessed and walked through the front doors of Birmingham General Hospital. The reception area was gleaming white marble, with crystal chandeliers and oil paintings of Confederate generals lining the walls. The moment she approached the reception desk, carrying Tommy in her arms, the white nurse looked at her with undisguised hostility. "Can I help you?" the nurse asked, though her tone suggested she had no intention of helping at all. Dolores explained Tommy's condition, showing the medical records from Dr. Crawford. The nurse barely glanced at the papers before shaking her head. "I'm sorry, but we don't treat your kind here. You'll need to go to Carver Hospital." Carver Hospital was Birmingham's designated colored hospital, located in the poorest section of the city. It was understaffed, underfunded, and equipped with medical technology that was decades old. When Dolores arrived at Carver with Tommy, who was now unconscious from pain, Dr. Washington, Carver's head physician, delivered devastating news. "Mrs. Washington, I wish I could help your boy, but we don't have the equipment we need. We have no blood bank for transfusions, no modern pain management systems, and our lab can't run the tests Tommy needs. He requires care that only the white hospitals can provide, and they won't take him." Dolores Washington fell to her knees in that hospital corridor, sobbing as her 6-year-old son's life slipped away. Robert held her as tears streamed down his face. They were trapped in a system that valued the color of skin over the value of life. Tommy had perhaps days to live, and there seemed to be no way to save him. But sometimes in the darkest moments, unexpected help arrives from the most unlikely sources. Dr. Crawford had a distant connection to the music world through his cousin, who worked as a janitor at Sun Records in Memphis. When word of Tommy's situation reached Memphis through this informal network, it eventually found its way to someone who had both the resources and the heart to help. Elvis Presley was in Memphis, taking a rare break from touring when Joe Esposito, his road manager, brought him a letter. The letter was from Dr. Crawford, explaining Tommy's situation and the impossible choice his family faced. Elvis read the letter twice, his jaw tightening with each word. When he finished, he was silent for a long moment. "Joe," Elvis said finally, "this is exactly what's wrong with this world. A 6-year-old boy is dying because of the color of his skin. That ain't right, and I won't stand for it." Joe Esposito had worked with Elvis for years and had seen him help countless people. often anonymously. But this situation was different. Getting involved in a racially charged medical case in Birmingham, Alabama in 1973 could destroy Elvis's career. The South was still his strongest fan base, and many of his supporters held views that were, to put it mildly, not progressive on racial matters. "Elvis," Joe said carefully, "you know I support whatever you want to do, but we need to think about this. If word gets out that you're involved in breaking segregation rules, it could hurt your career. Colonel Parker will never approve this." Elvis stood up, his eyes flashing with determination. "Joe, I don't give a damn what the colonel thinks about this. A little boy is dying, and I have the power to help him. That's all that matters. Sometimes doing what's right is more important than doing what's safe." That night, Elvis made a decision that would change everything. He called his private physician, Dr. George Nicopolis, and explained the situation. Dr. Nick, as Elvis called him, had connections throughout the medical community and could help facilitate the kind of care Tommy needed. But first, they had to figure out how to get around Birmingham's segregation policies. Elvis's plan was both simple and dangerous. He would personally fund Tommy's treatment, but it had to be done in complete secrecy. Dr. Nick would arrange for the necessary medical equipment to be donated to Carver Hospital, along with a team of specialists who would travel to Birmingham under the cover of a medical conference. On November 20th, 1973, Elvis flew to Birmingham on a private plane, landing at a small airfield outside the city under cover of darkness. He wore a simple black suit and dark sunglasses, nothing like his usual flamboyant stage attire. His goal was to remain unrecognized and to personally ensure that Tommy received the care he needed. The plan almost fell apart before it began. When Elvis arrived at Carver Hospital, the security guard at the entrance recognized him immediately. "Mr. Presley, what are you doing here at this time of night?" Elvis knew he had to think fast. He couldn't afford to have word of his presence leak out. "Listen, friend," Elvis said, pressing a folded bill into the guard's hand. "I'm here to visit a sick child, and I need this to stay between us. Can you help me with that?" The guard, a black man named Samuel, who had grown up listening to Elvis's music, nodded silently and let him pass. Elvis made his way through the dimly lit corridors of Carver Hospital, following Dr. Washington to Tommy's room. What he saw there broke his heart. The little boy lay unconscious in a hospital bed that was decades old, in a room with peeling paint and equipment that belonged in a museum. Tommy's parents sat beside the bed, holding hands and praying quietly. When Dolores looked up and saw Elvis standing in the doorway, she gasped. "Are you?" Elvis nodded and approached the bed slowly. "Mrs. Washington, my name is Elvis Presley, and I'm here because I heard about Tommy. I want to help." Robert Washington stood up slowly, unsure whether to believe what he was seeing. "Mr. Presley, what are you doing here? How did you even know about our boy?" Elvis pulled out Dr. Crawford's letter and handed it to Robert. "A good doctor wrote to me about Tommy's situation. He told me about the hospitals that won't treat him and about how you've been turned away because of segregation. That's not right, and I'm here to make sure Tommy gets the care he needs." Elvis sat down beside Tommy's bed and gently took the boy's small hand in his. Tommy stirred slightly at the touch, his eyes fluttering open. When he saw Elvis, a weak smile crossed his face. "Mama," he whispered, "is that really Elvis Presley?" Dolores, tears streaming down her face, nodded. "Yes, baby, it is." "Tommy," Elvis said softly, "I heard you've been having a tough time, son. But I want you to know that everything's going to be okay. Some very good doctors are coming to see you, and they're going to have all the medicine and equipment you need to get better." Elvis reached into his jacket and pulled out a small harmonica. "This is for you, Tommy. It's one of my favorite harmonicas, and I want you to have it. When you're feeling scared or in pain, I want you to hold this, and remember that Elvis Presley believes you're going to get through this." Tommy's eyes lit up as he held the harmonica, and for the first time in days, Dolores saw hope in her son's face. But Elvis wasn't finished. He turned to Dr. Washington and handed him an envelope. "Doctor, this should cover all of Tommy's medical expenses, plus the cost of the new equipment your hospital needs. I want you to use this money to make sure no other child has to suffer because they can't get proper medical care." Dr. Washington opened the envelope and his eyes widened. Inside was a check for $50,000, equivalent to nearly $300,000 in today's money. It was enough to completely modernize Carver Hospital's pediatric wing and provide care for hundreds of children. "Mr. Presley, I don't know what to say. This is incredibly generous, but are you sure you want to do this?" Elvis stood up and placed his hand on Dr. Washington's shoulder. "Doctor, I've been blessed with more money than I know what to do with. Using it to save children's lives seems like the best investment I could make, but I need you to promise me something. This donation needs to remain anonymous. If word gets out that I'm involved, it could cause problems for everyone, including Tommy's family." What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. Within 48 hours, medical equipment that had been donated by anonymous benefactors began arriving at Carver Hospital. A team of specialists from Memphis and Atlanta appeared, claiming to be in Birmingham for a medical conference. Tommy received blood transfusions, advanced pain medication, and round-the-clock care from some of the South's best doctors. But Elvis's involvement didn't stop with financial support. Every few days he would return to Birmingham, always under cover of darkness, to check on Tommy's progress. Sometimes he would bring his guitar and sing quietly for the children in the pediatric ward. Other times, he would simply sit with families, offering comfort and hope during their darkest hours. Word of the mysterious improvements at Carver Hospital began to spread through Birmingham's Black community. Parents who had been turned away from white hospitals started bringing their children to Carver, knowing they would receive quality care. The hospital's reputation grew, and other donors, inspired by the anonymous generosity they had witnessed, began contributing as well. Tommy's recovery was slow but steady. The new equipment and medication allowed doctors to manage his sickle cell anemia effectively, and after 3 weeks in the hospital, he was stable enough to go home. On the night before his discharge, Elvis made one final visit to Tommy's room. "How are you feeling, son?" Elvis asked, sitting down beside Tommy's bed. Tommy, now alert and smiling, held up the harmonica Elvis had given him. "I've been practicing, Mr. Elvis. Listen." He played a simple tune, and Elvis's face broke into a wide grin. "That's beautiful, Tommy. You keep practicing, and maybe someday you'll be making music professionally." "Mr. Elvis," Tommy said, "why did you help me? You don't even know me." Elvis was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Tommy, there are people in this world who think the color of your skin makes you different from them. But when I look at you, I see a little boy who loves music, who's brave in the face of pain, and who has parents who love him more than anything in the world. That's not different from any other child I've ever met." Elvis continued, "I helped you because it was the right thing to do. Sometimes doing what's right means breaking rules that shouldn't exist in the first place. And I want you to remember something, Tommy. When you grow up, I want you to help other people the way I tried to help you. Can you promise me that?" Tommy nodded solemnly. "I promise, Mr. Elvis, I'll help people." Elvis smiled and ruffled Tommy's hair. "I believe you will, son. I believe you'll do great things." Elvis's secret mission to Birmingham had succeeded beyond his wildest dreams, but the story was far from over. Word of the amazing improvements at Carver Hospital reached other cities throughout the South. Medical professionals began questioning why black hospitals had been allowed to operate with substandard equipment while white hospitals received the latest technology. A group of progressive doctors in Memphis, inspired by the changes they had witnessed in Birmingham, began advocating for the integration of hospital services. They argued that medical care should be based on need, not race, and that segregated healthcare was not only morally wrong, but also medically ineffective. The pressure for change was building, but it took a dramatic incident to finally break down the barriers. In December 1973, just weeks after Tommy's recovery, a black child in Memphis was turned away from 3 white hospitals before dying in the emergency room of the understaffed black hospital. The story made national news, and the public outcry was immediate and intense. Elvis, who had been following these developments closely, decided it was time to take a more public stand. Working through intermediaries, he quietly supported the efforts to integrate Memphis hospitals. His financial contributions and behind-the-scenes advocacy helped tip the balance in favor of integration. By the spring of 1974, Memphis had become the first major southern city to fully integrate its hospital system. Black and white patients were treated side by side, with the same quality of care and access to the latest medical technology. The success in Memphis inspired similar changes throughout the South, creating a domino effect that would save countless lives. Tommy Washington thrived in the years following his treatment. The quality medical care he received at Carver Hospital, made possible by Elvis's intervention, allowed him to manage his sickle cell anemia effectively. He grew up to be a bright, determined young man with a deep sense of justice and compassion for others. True to his promise to Elvis, Tommy dedicated his life to helping people. He excelled in school, and earned a scholarship to Morehouse College, where he studied pre-law. He went on to attend Howard University Law School, where he specialized in civil rights law. After graduation, he returned to Birmingham and opened a practice focused on fighting discrimination in all its forms. Throughout his career, Tommy never forgot the night Elvis Presley risked his reputation to save a dying black child. He kept the harmonica Elvis had given him on his desk as a reminder of the power of individual action to create positive change. When clients felt overwhelmed by the injustices they faced, Tommy would tell them about a night in 1973 when a famous white musician proved that courage could overcome prejudice. Elvis and Tommy maintained a secret correspondence for years. Elvis would send birthday cards and Christmas gifts, always signed simply, "A friend who believes in you." Tommy would send updates about his progress in school and later his legal career. Neither man ever spoke publicly about their relationship, but it remained a source of strength and inspiration for both of them. The full story of Elvis's intervention in Birmingham remained hidden for decades. Elvis never sought recognition for his actions, and the Washington family respected his wish for anonymity. It wasn't until after Elvis's death in 1977 that some details of his charitable work began to emerge, but even then, the Birmingham story remained largely secret. In 1993, 20 years after that fateful night, Tommy Washington was asked to speak at a civil rights commemoration in Birmingham. For the first time, he publicly told the story of how Elvis Presley had saved his life and helped change the South. The audience was stunned by the revelation, and many people wept as Tommy described Elvis's courage and compassion. "Elvis Presley could have lived his entire life without ever knowing my name," Tommy said in his speech. "He could have stayed safely in his mansion in Memphis, counting his money and enjoying his fame. Instead, he risked everything to save a 6-year-old black boy he had never met. That's not just generosity, that's moral courage of the highest order." The impact of Elvis's actions extended far beyond saving one child's life. The integration of Southern hospitals that began in Memphis saved thousands of lives over the following decades. Children who would have died due to segregated healthcare lived to grow up, have families, and contribute to their communities. The ripple effects of that one night in Birmingham continue to this day. Modern medical historians studying the integration of Southern healthcare often point to the Memphis model as the catalyst for change. What they don't know is that the Memphis model was made possible by a secret act of courage by the king of rock and roll, who proved that fame and fortune mean nothing if they're not used to help others. Tommy Washington practiced civil rights law for over 40 years before retiring in 2015. During his career, he won landmark cases that expanded access to healthcare, education, and employment for African Americans throughout the South. He established a scholarship fund for minority students pursuing careers in medicine and law, continuing the legacy of helping others that began with Elvis's gift. Today, at the age of 57, Tommy Washington serves on the board of directors of several civil rights organizations. He still keeps Elvis's harmonica on his desk, and he still tells the story of that night in 1973 to young people who are fighting for justice in their own communities. The harmonica serves as a reminder that individual actions, taken in secret and without expectation of reward, can change the world. The hospital room where Elvis first met Tommy Washington has been preserved as part of a museum dedicated to the civil rights movement in Birmingham. A small plaque next to the door reads, "In this room, on November 21, 1973, an act of courage changed the course of history." Visitors to the museum don't know the full story behind the plaque, but Tommy Washington does, and he makes sure that Elvis's legacy of compassion and justice is never forgotten. The story of Elvis and Tommy Washington reminds us that heroism doesn't always happen on stage or in front of cameras. Sometimes the most important acts of courage happen in hospital rooms at midnight, when someone with the power to help chooses to risk everything for a stranger. Elvis Presley may be remembered as the king of rock and roll, but for one family in Birmingham, Alabama, he will always be remembered as the man who proved that love is stronger than hate, that compassion is more powerful than prejudice, and that doing what's right is always worth the risk. In a world that often seems divided by differences, the memory of that November night in Birmingham stands as a testament to the power of human connection. Elvis Presley didn't just save Tommy Washington's life, he showed us all what it means to use our gifts, whatever they may be, in service of others. And in doing so, he changed not just one child's future, but the future of an entire region, proving that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can have the biggest impact on the world. The Birmingham Hospital where Tommy was treated has since been renamed the Washington Medical Center in honor of the family that helped change history. A bronze statue of a young boy holding a harmonica stands in the lobby with an inscription that reads, "To all the children whose courage changed the world, and to those who believed in them." Visitors often ask about the significance of the harmonica, but only a few people know the real story behind it. Elvis's influence on healthcare integration extended beyond the American South. Word of the Birmingham intervention and the Memphis hospital integration reached civil rights leaders in other countries who were fighting similar battles. In South Africa, where apartheid still held sway, activists used the Memphis model as an example of how peaceful integration could be achieved in medical facilities. Dr. George Nicopolis, Elvis's personal physician who had helped coordinate the secret mission to Birmingham, later revealed in his memoirs that Elvis had funded similar operations in at least 6 other southern cities. These interventions, all conducted in complete secrecy, helped accelerate the integration of healthcare facilities throughout the region. Dr. Nick estimated that Elvis had spent over $300,000 of his own money on these humanitarian efforts. The psychological impact of Elvis's actions on Tommy Washington cannot be overstated. Growing up knowing that someone as famous and powerful as Elvis Presley had risked his career to save his life gave Tommy an unshakable belief in the power of individual action to create change. This belief sustained him through law school, through his early career fighting discrimination cases, and through the many setbacks that come with challenging entrenched systems of inequality. During his law school years at Howard University, Tommy wrote his senior thesis on the role of celebrity activism in advancing civil rights. While he couldn't reveal his personal connection to Elvis at the time, his research into the intersection of fame and social justice became groundbreaking work that influenced a generation of scholars studying celebrity advocacy for social causes. Tommy's law practice in Birmingham became legendary for taking on cases that other lawyers wouldn't touch. He specialized in medical discrimination cases, helping families who had been denied care because of their race, economic status, or geographic location. His success rate was extraordinary, partly because he understood firsthand how the system could fail vulnerable people, and partly because his passion for justice was fueled by a deep personal gratitude to someone who had shown him that change was possible. In 1985, Tommy Washington argued a landmark case before the Alabama Supreme Court that established the legal precedent that hospitals receiving any form of public funding could not discriminate based on race or economic status. The case, Washington v. Alabama Hospital Association, became the foundation for similar rulings throughout the South and helped ensure that the integration that began with Elvis's intervention became permanent and legally protected. The night Elvis died in August 1977, Tommy Washington was in his 3rd year of law school. He remembers sitting in his dormitory room, listening to the news reports about Elvis's death, and feeling as though he had lost a family member. He had never spoken publicly about his relationship with Elvis, but that night he called his parents in Birmingham and they held a private memorial service in their home, playing Elvis's gospel songs and sharing memories of the man who had saved their son's life. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, had never known about the Birmingham intervention or Elvis's other secret civil rights activities. If he had known, he almost certainly would have tried to stop them. Parker was always concerned about protecting Elvis's image and maintaining his broad appeal, particularly in the South. The fact that Elvis conducted these operations without Parker's knowledge or approval demonstrates the depth of his personal commitment to doing what he believed was right, regardless of the potential consequences for his career. Priscilla Presley, in her later interviews about Elvis, often mentioned his deep sense of social justice, though she never revealed specific details about his secret charitable work. She did say that Elvis was deeply troubled by inequality and injustice, and that he often talked about using his fame and fortune to help people who couldn't help themselves. Her descriptions of Elvis's character align perfectly with the courage and compassion he showed in Birmingham. The harmonica that Elvis gave to Tommy Washington became more than just a musical instrument. It became a symbol of hope and connection that Tommy carried with him throughout his life. He learned to play it well over the years, and he would often perform at civil rights gatherings and legal conferences, always dedicating his performances to a friend who taught me that music can heal more than just the soul. In 1993, on the 20th anniversary of his treatment at Carver Hospital, Tommy Washington returned to Birmingham to establish a scholarship fund for minority students pursuing careers in medicine and law. The fund, called the Anonymous Angel Scholarship, provided full tuition and living expenses for students who demonstrated both academic excellence and a commitment to serving underserved communities. Tommy never revealed that the fund was named in honor of Elvis Presley. The scholarship fund has supported over 200 students since its establishment, and many of its recipients have gone on to become doctors, lawyers, and community leaders who continue the work of fighting discrimination and expanding access to essential services. The ripple effects of Elvis's original act of courage continue to create positive change more than 50 years later. Modern researchers studying the civil rights movement have identified the integration of Southern hospitals as one of the most significant but underreported achievements of the era. The peaceful transition from segregated to integrated healthcare facilities provided a model for integration in other sectors, including education and public accommodations. What these researchers don't know is how much of this progress can be traced back to a secret mission by a rock and roll star who believed that saving a child's life was more important than protecting his career. Today, Tommy Washington's grandson, Elvis Washington, named in honor of the man who saved his grandfather's life, is studying medicine at Morehouse School of Medicine. He plans to specialize in pediatric hematology, the same field that saved his grandfather's life. The family legacy of service and the values of courage and compassion that Elvis Presley exemplified continue to inspire new generations. The original letter that Dr. Crawford wrote to Elvis, the one that started this entire chain of events, is now displayed in the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of African American History and Culture. The letter is part of an exhibit on unsung heroes of the civil rights movement, though the museum's description doesn't reveal Elvis's identity, referring only to an anonymous benefactor whose intervention saved a child's life and helped integrate Southern healthcare. If this incredible story of courage overcoming prejudice moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about the power of standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. What would you risk to save a stranger's life? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing stories about the moments that reveal the best of human nature.